Sorry, I'd like to add just a tiny bit to that because the other thing I was thinking is that, again, the Common Core standards, what they seem to require overall is like a more of an understanding of mathematics as a whole, not as different subjects and different types of problems, kind of isolated different types of procedures and methods. But understanding mathematics as a whole, as it's built up from a very basic level to higher and higher levels, and of course I agree with that goal. But this is again where I always think to myself that I wish students from a very early age learn mathematics in this way more. Like if they knew more about, just the very basic concepts of mathematics, like what is a set, or what is an element of a set, or what is a subset of a set, or I mean, this kind of, and I'm not saying that they need to learn all the technical terms necessarily and everything, but just a basic understanding of these concepts and some vocabulary, obviously, that goes along with them, so that we can actually talk about these deeper concepts in mathematics. And because very often I'm wondering if I'm connecting with my students when I try to get, to more into the logic of how things are built up or how things work. So I don't know. So I definitely agree with these goals, but I think that we're kind of far from achieving these goals because of these reasons. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that doing the alignment work itself actually was more difficult than we thought it would be. And this is where we're going to need EPIC's help as we continue with it. For instance, there would be some mathematical topic, and each person from each institution was supposed to indicate whether they fully or partially covered that topic or not at all. Well, there would be some topic that we thought was pretty essential, and quite a few were putting not at all. But when we had a phone conversation about it, we found it was because they considered that a prerequisite skill that the student needed to have before they came into Math 111. So we decided we need to have a different process of indicating, is this a skill you expect them to have by the time they leave this course, even if it was only maybe reviewed within that course. So there were some of the nuances of that alignment work that we learned this first go-round that I think we'll probably do a better job when we go on.
This really isn't a question, and it may be tangent to the discussion of Common Core, but it does have a lot to do with the alignment that you're talking of and what we're hearing here. And recently I had to write a syllabus for my pre-calculus class, as it is called, which is to align with Math 95. And I spent, in my mind, a lot of time on doing that, and sent it to the, for lack of knowing the exact title, director of the community college, and the email was sent back to say, no, that's not what you're supposed to have sent us. You're supposed to have sent us exactly what the community college, I'm trying to say this without saying names, but what the community college's course Math 95 says. And I got really frustrated because, as I said, I spent time doing this and I felt I covered all the topics, but it wasn't worded exactly the same way. So I sat down, I cut and paste, threw that into the syllabus, sent it off to the community college, and they were happy. And that just doesn't seem right. So that's just a comment.
The interface between systems, as the high school and the community college system meet, you find that the two wheels in theory are spinning the same direction, but one is spinning at a different rate than the other. Gear sizes are different, and that interface is really rugged at times. And it's been a very interesting situation to have a foot sort of in both worlds. I haven't gotten down to the middle school level yet, and I hope to keep it that way. I understand, saints, that's what you all are. I'm not good enough. It's that simple. But no, but I totally understand your frustration as you deal with these two systems, which in theory, the mesh should be perfect. The mesh should be absolutely perfect, especially at the community college level, because it's a community college, and it isn't. And I totally agree that mesh has been difficult. The good news is I can say that with our community college and the high school that I work at, that communication is getting better. That's what I can tell you. And my hope is that it doesn't necessarily make my job easier. My hope is that the kids that sit in my class as freshmen have a better opportunity to transition smoothly into higher education. That's really honestly what I hope. And I think that we're doing a better job now than we did last year. It may not be very good, but it's better.
So,
I'd like to actually address, just very quickly, I'd like to address this comment also, because that's one of the things that I was thinking earlier, and I forgot to say that, another thing about Common Core, in my opinion, is that as far as the students are concerned, because, there's this issue of how it affects students and what would their concerns be about this transition. And so here is where we need to be very clear to the students what the requirements are. So to write the syllabi exactly the right way, and then to use the right language in your syllabus is going to be very important, so that the students understand exactly what these new requirements are, or what these different requirements are. So that's going to be a challenge for sure, even in itself, just to communicate this to students. And then it will be very important.
so I have a question related to the alignment of 111, the coming alignment of 95. Several of the comments you made, what would be your top couple of three things that you would recommend to do, not hope, but to actually do, so that we don't have to wait for Mike's 3.5-year-old to get to college? What are we going to do for those who are getting there in the next 3 or 4 years?
There's actually 2 of them. I have twins, so the stakes are even higher.
Okay.
So what do we do? Well,
That's
exactly the question, isn't it? What do we do? Well, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we do exactly, but I agree with Mike here about how we might have to reduce the number of topics we cover in some of these courses to be able to get deeper into the ones that we do cover, right? And so that might be a direction in which we can go. Then obviously, as many others mentioned here, there are all these different alternative methods of teaching, besides the lecturing at the whiteboard or blackboard. So, and I've tried some of these alternative methods like group work and things like that, like group projects and stuff like that, with varying results. So definitely, I know that for myself, that's going to be one of my challenges, to find different ways of teaching this stuff to students, and different types of class activities that work actually. So.
Teaching mostly freshman and sophomore right now, the word that I have to include in my assessment, both formative and summative, there's a word I have to introduce, and it's why. Why, not what. Why. And that gets at the depth that Common Core is talking about. Why is this the way it is? You saw the slide. Why is it when, was it V0 and C0 were equal to each other? Why does L0 go to 0? Or I forget even, but that's a beautiful, why is that? That's a great question. And I think that if there's one thing that I need to do for my freshman, sophomore, so I don't have to wait for my first grader or my third grader, because I have one of each of those, they're not twins. But I think the question is why. And I guess I'm going to challenge myself to make certain that I expect my students to be able to answer a why question every day, 3 times a week. And why is that? And those are tough questions to ask, because there isn't necessarily a really good, clean, set answer for it. They're tough to assess. And one of the things that Tillamook is doing is they're putting writing in every single classroom at the high school, for example. And man, there's a lot of kickback when you ask a PE teacher to have their students write. And the PE teacher is supposed to score that. and turn it into the district to provide students an opportunity to write and write and write and write and write. And I think that's where the assessment for those types of questions come in. You have to look at the writing. And that's a challenge. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. And I also wanted to add something. But
I think that part of what we get at when we're talking about these types of things is that idea of rigor and increasing the rigor in your classroom, because that's something that even if you didn't change topics, even if you didn't change what you were actually teaching, even if you didn't, change your syllabus, if you just went with what you'd already been doing, but you increase the rigor, which can be difficult because it's like, what does that really mean? And increasing the rigor, of course, increases the amount of time that you need to spend because our students aren't used to that yet necessarily. But by increasing the rigor, I hope that what we're doing is we're raising the level of mathematics. And I think by doing that, hopefully what we'll produce is students who they can think mathematically and they can function mathematically, not just when they're in that specific chapter, which is what we see, oftentimes with our students. Sure, they can, write an equation of a line, but only when they're within that chapter, because you take them 2 chapters down the road and they've totally forgotten that. So by increasing that rigor, hopefully we're, expanding their knowledge set such that, we want it to stick a little bit harder, I guess, is kind of my thought.
Well, so I just wanted to add something very quickly, and I don't know how much time we have, but yeah, I want to agree with Nathan here about this question of why things work the way they work, and of course that would be one of the big goals in Common Core standards to have this understanding. But I think it's even a challenge to make students understand that there is this question in mathematics, that there is a reason for everything. They don't actually know that. They take everything for granted, and so they don't even understand necessarily that in mathematics everything goes back to some very basic set of ideas or whatever, and there's always a question of why things work the way they work, and then they can be answered actually. And what the other thing I wanted to say about this is that I think even for us as teachers and math instructors, it takes a lifetime to understand some of these issues. I just recently, I want to give you this example quickly, that I thought I had this great idea in one of my classes. It was a Math 60 class, which is a basic algebra course. And so, I figured that just in my own personal experience, it took me a long time to understand what a number is, right? So I wanted to pose this question to my students: what is a number? And I thought it would be an awesome question, and there would be a great discussion afterwards. But it didn't quite work out that way. But I thought this is a point where I thought I could really connect with my students, because as I said, it can take you, many years, even if you're a mathematician, to really understand what a number is, or and what we mean by describing numbers by different methods and stuff like this. But so I had to conclude that my students don't really have that understanding that in mathematics we have to ask these deep questions, and there is actually a reason for it, and then we need to describe everything in a very strictly logical way that shows how everything works exactly. So it's definitely a great challenge. But that's definitely the right questions to ask, for sure. So, thank you. Yes.
So I guess I would say, I'll let you know how this turns out, but I'm basically in college algebra right now trying to present everything contextually, that is in an applied context. So every topic begins with some type of application. And so I think this is a different direction than what Geza is talking about. I guess the thought process is that if you want to get somebody interested in the internal combustion engine, then you have them drive a BMW or something. You give them a taste for the flare, and then you can say, okay, well, if you want to know more, here's some of the, let's take a look under the hood. And this is purely speculative. I don't know how, I don't know if there's great data around it. I know there's data around contextual learning and the longevity of that, that students tend to hold on to that for a little bit longer when something is presented in a more familiar context. So I guess getting back to the original question, what could we do as instructors to help facilitate this? I think that's maybe one thing, trying to engage them in a somewhat non-mathematical manner initially, and have that generally in a sort of insidious fashion turn into mathematics. So you can, this requires a lot of work, right? I think every K-12 instructor's blood boils when higher ed folks talk about Common Core, because you say, oh well, all you have to do is take what you're doing and do it better and harder and more. Fine, with less money and fewer other resources. And more students, right, of course. So just do that. So there's got to be some trade-off. Again, the hoarding thing. There's got to be some trade-off, but I think there are some things that we can do simply, and if that's providing better, I don't know, test bank is the wrong word, but examples of great applications that people can use, because so much of the hard work behind this is coming up with good, as Dev would say, juicy problems to present to students and use those as learning opportunities. So we tend to resort to the easier kinds of more abstract problems because we just don't have time to come up with these really great, interesting questions. So wherever we can beg, borrow, and steal and present things in these great problems in kind of an applied perspective, I think we can get at least the opportunity for more students who wouldn't have engaged otherwise or wouldn't retain it longer on board.
Is it for me? Oh, okay. Well, this really isn't a question for the panel, but I think it's more of an observation. I teach at community college, and I believe we're talking about communication and articulation. With your question of what are we going to do, we're talking, I think, dually about methods of teaching and then just of communication of what the outcomes are. There's bad teaching that produces good outcomes, and there's good teaching that produces bad outcomes, and there's good and bad and bad. So we've got quite a scope here. But at the community college, it seems like right now we're stuck in the middle. We've articulated with universities in the past, we have common course numbering, and that's been brought up a few times today. We all know what Math 111 is. And I think that's because we've sat down and we've talked about the content of what's expected in those classes. So we've talked about outcome, not necessarily how we're going to present that, but we've got those outcomes down. I don't think we're arguing anymore between community college and university of, oh, your student took Math 111, but that's not good enough for us. Is that right, Mike?
I think there's still room for discussion.
Okay, well, of course. But perhaps we haven't done that as well as we should or could be doing with high school to community college. But high school also feeds directly into university. So what are we going to do? And I think this communication piece is essential.
The reason we have this grant is for this communication piece. And it really is a grant of a hypothesis. If Common Core and Smarter Balance could align with post-secondary, in particular Math 111, if all that is true and could be true, then could you potentially not have those X% of your students that come directly from high school need a placement test into community college Math 111 or reviewed at university systems. They do subset placement tests differently. They get admissions first and then that happens later. Could it really do that? We have a 3-year grant to figure out, is that true? If not, we get to push back. We are one of the 10 states that get to say, Smarter Balance, nice for Common Core, but it doesn't connect with post-secondary. Or, hey, it does connect with post-secondary, but it doesn't really help us assessing students who come in. It's a different issue. You can't do the assessment piece to do the conversation piece about what is Common Core and what is Math 111. And is there room in Math 111 between all 24 post-secondary to change it, tweak it a little bit so it could align? Because students are really coming out with this level. Could it align and help those students keep going to math? No one's telling us what to do. We get to choose first the conversation. So that's why you're all here. 2, what do we need to know about each other's stuff? And if you're not talking to each other, start talking, because that's when we're going to get there. The reason we have a very small community, Tillamook, and a very large community, Lane County, is that if you can make it work in really small and really large, most likely the rest of the state can make it work too. So how do you do that conversation? And truly is the conversation first. That's why we did the alignment. What's there, what's not? 50% there, kind of there. Maybe it's not this. Is that 50% worth? Is it close enough? The conversation is, Scott, your question, is 50% close enough to go to the next step? Or do we have to go back and talk about what's in 111 to create an alignment? And there's a post-secondary conversation. I value the 24 math areas who have worked overtime on aligning Math 111. And if I give the mic back to Don McNair or to Doug, it has taken time. And every so often, all the post-secondary folks have to come back together in Math 111 because it kind of slides a little bit. And we work together again to get it realigned. It's really our challenge. In some ways, Oregon could have said, forget the grant, Common Core, go do your thing, work with the high schools, because that's what you always do. Leave us out of all the change. We're just going to keep doing Math 111. We'll be quite happy. And some of you might say, why didn't you do that? And it's because our students, the Oregon University system, over 60% of their graduates are coming from community colleges now. We're the largest feeder in the OUS system. More and more students are going to community colleges because of the cost. So somewhere we really have to step up and say, if you'll give us some money to test this, is this the right thing to test and do? So you don't have to say, I'm accepting it 100%. You don't have to say it's perfect. It's really the conversation. Can this assist us and our students? Can it create a better alignment of learning? And if you listen to Dr. Rudy Crew talk, he talks about the 11 through 14 area is one of his biggest concerns. How do you get more students from high school continuing into some kind of post-secondary? And Math 111 is a gateway, like Writing 121. So how do those things align? So the rest of the afternoon, what you do, however you do this, it's not about telling you what to do. It's can we engage you to have the conversations about what is, and Scott, what can be. Are there any changes, Wayne, that we should do? And if there is, how do we communicate that together, which is why we have Lisa Reynolds to assist us. How do we communicate that together? And if it doesn't fit, how do we go back to the Department of Ed, go back to Smarter Balance and say, you know what, if you did these 5 things, we could really align this. But we have that ability too. We can tell them what we need. They've never asked to have input from post-secondary to tell them what they need ever before in any K through 12 reform. This is a chance to say, you know what? You've got close and you've got this rich, deep stuff. But maybe we need rich, deep stuff in this area. I'm not a mathematician. Most of you who know me know that. I don't know math. I just get in the middle of math conversations for whatever strange reason. It keeps coming my way. Is that it's important. How deep do you go and how many topics? So it really is. This is a way to invite all of you around the state with your community colleges, your university partnership, and your high schools. What can we do together? And the first step is, what do we have? Do I really understand? So if it's a copy and paste of Math 95 to get somebody to accept it, hopefully it opens the door to talk about why you had to copy and paste it. If it is about what's in 95 and 111, how do we do that? I think it's whatever the door is, the door needs to get open. And that's what this is about. So I just thank the panel. I thank all of you for showing up. But it isn't about it's being done to us. This is a grant to let us choose, can it work for student learning? And that's really what it's about.
Thank you. Teacher education seems to be a critical, if not the critical, issue in implementing Common Core policies and facilitating the transition to higher education. So I was wondering if the panel has insights about how we need to be training either in-service or pre-service teachers to better reach these goals.
One of the things that I did on Tuesday as we had district-wide in-service was I met with the 6th grade team. You want to talk about stressed individuals, talk to K6 about Common Core, and you're going to really get an interesting kickback on that. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to use our specialists at the 9 through 12 area to work with the K-8 teachers to make certain that they understand at least the topic that is going to be asked of them to teach. And so talking about in-service of how do you get teachers aware of at least the content. And so that's one thing that we're doing is we're having the high school math staff work specifically with K-6 educators to make certain that they understand what they're supposed to be working on. And Jill worked on Tuesday with K-5, is that right, Jill? To do that. And so that's one area. Another area is to talk about quality teaching. And quality teaching engagement strategies and all that buzz stuff is real. And you got to have quality teaching going on in the classroom. And at some level that becomes an administrative issue to make certain that you have quality teaching going on. So those are two things. Make certain that the teaching is of the highest quality, which is hard. And then the other is to make certain that the downstream people understand what it is that they're supposed to be teaching. I believe at the secondary level, I understand what it is that I'm supposed to be teaching. I don't know if I can get the kids to learn what they're supposed to learn. But from a pedagogical standpoint, I know the material. I don't necessarily believe that's the case downstream in K-6. 7, 8, as always, caught in the middle, right? It's kind of like the community college system, caught in the middle, you know. And so that's something we can do. Pre-service, I don't know about, but I know in service that's something you can do in your district right now, if nothing else, to alleviate fear and create more confidence that the teachers can do what they're being asked to do.
I think we have time for one more question just before we break for lunch. Okay. Was something, Mike, were you going to say something? Or Christina?
I was just going to add to that, because that's a lot of what I've been doing the last couple of years as an instructional coach for the Bethel School District is helping everyone understand exactly what it is that they're supposed to teach with greater depth and knowledge. You have to remember too that in our current, I hate to say current economical times of K through 12 education, you know, the resources that our teachers are teaching with do not align to the Common Core state standards, not even close. I mean, some of the stuff, you know, I'm telling a teacher, you know, like, hey, guess what? In 2nd grade, you don't teach time anymore. It's taught at another level, or whatever the case may be. And they look at me like, yeah, but it's in my book. And I say, yes, but that's not necessarily your topic anymore based off of the Common Core state standards. So it's helping them understand what it is they're supposed to be teaching. And I think part of the issue at the K through 6 level that makes it so challenging is because all of those teachers are teaching not just math. A lot of time by the time they get to 7th and 8th grade, you have math specialists teaching, and especially when they get into high school. But in K through 6, they're teaching math in conjunction with 35 other things every single day. So they don't have that time to just maybe go in and focus on the way that, you know, a math specialist would. So it's understanding what they are to teach and having the resources available, which is great. You know, to look at resources like Dev's Illustrative Mathematics to show them, you know, it's not necessarily a fear of teaching it or how to teach it. Sometimes that does exist, we know, but having the resources available and not having to reinvent the wheel when they're using a textbook that in no way aligns to what they're supposed to be doing. So, and yes, and no money to get new materials to support that. So there's a lot of things there. And again, that's all in-service teachers. I think with pre-service teachers, you maybe have it slightly easier because you can kind of set the stage for them and help form their mindset before they go out and try teaching it a different way. But again, they're going to be battling the same issues when they get out there of, what materials are available, what resources are available, and each individual district and how they approach it. So.
I wanted to make one very quick point because Connie brought this up earlier, and so we talk a lot about what we need to do, what changes we need to make in our classrooms to live up to these standards. But then a huge part of that is going to be assessment, right? Connie brought this up, and so everything we decide we might try to do to improve instruction and deeper understanding and all this stuff has to go along with a method of being able to assess it. That's another one of my big problems with all of this. That I might think, just like this example I gave you with the numbers, I thought that would be a great discussion, and maybe we'll gain some understanding by the end of it. But then I have to be able to assess whether that is really true. And so any method or different class activity or anything you think of absolutely must go along with a method of testing whether that actually works. And so because I've had many great ideas that didn't end up working, and so we need to be able to tell whether we're getting all this stuff to our students. So it's just a quick point I wanted to make.
I just wanted to make a comment that kind of based on what people are talking about. I really welcome the opportunity to have K-12 and higher ed in this conversation, because it's really a fantastic opportunity. And I'm hearing Nathan and other people up there talking about the fact that, everything has kind of moved down is for, the complexity and the topics and everything in math, and it's more complex. And so we have elementary folks that don't have the expertise to teach some of these areas, as you guys were mentioning. And so it's not only what we need to do in service in the districts. We need to really help people understand so they can do a really excellent job at those lower levels. So once you do have kids going into higher ed for community college or the 4-year track, that we have kids who are really prepared. And that's why the CCSS is really so powerful, and we're such a turning point here, I think, to make this all happen. So I think for the universities, it's about pre-service and having teachers leaving who are fully prepared and knowledgeable about the CCSS versus a textbook or a course topic, because those days are really kind of sliding away, and our nation has to do this because we need to have more math and science folks that really know what they're doing. So it is on our shoulders. It's a big request. It's a big thing to do. There's no diminishing that, but I'm excited about the fact that the university system really wants to work with who's coming their way and can take them even further. So I think it's a great opportunity. But you raise great concerns and great questions, and we're all a little stymied by them, but we can do it.